Okay. See if this works. Slideshow. Go to projector. Yay, it works. All right, so yada yada yada, Pesach and everything like that. Quick review just for the sake of reviewing. I know I review a lot, but I feel like we've been out of it long enough. Give you a few minutes of it. Leadership theory practice. We've talked about all kinds of different things, like the basic definition of leadership. We've tried to understand leadership and the different perspectives on it. Specifically, one of the things we've looked at is the difference between management and leadership. This is something that we see all over. It's something we see in the military, for instance. The difference between the people who in the military who are good at managing something, but they're not really good at getting people on board to do stuff. It's something we see in the political realm, in government a lot, where a Sar or a member of the cabinet or something will make a decision, and they expect that everybody is going to follow their lead and follow their decision making. And very often it depends on the nature of the department you're talking about. For instance, if you're talking about the Department of Internal Security and they have a certain perspective on something, and then a new guy comes in and he goes, well, I want to change how we do things. They go, well, that's nice, twiddle, twiddle, twiddle my thumbs. And as long as they're dragging their feet, nothing gets done, even though he has a vision. He has this new idea that he wants to put into the world. So it's really important to see and recognize this nuanced difference between management and leadership. And see the leadership as a process. Because if you see leadership as a process, it will help you to understand not only the individuals involved, their traits, their characteristics, things like that, but you can see how it's changed over time. How has the world changed over time because of leadership, right? So when you guys do your papers, or when you're out in the world and you're thinking about, well, do I want to follow this person? Think about, one of the things you should think about is maybe, how is my being a follower going to help him change the world or her change the world? Okay? If you can do that, if you can see those differences, it will help you to understand all the different aspects of the process. And it will help you be a better follower in the process, which is going to be the main topic of our discussion today, is followership. We've spoken about managers and management and leadership and management function. We've spoken about, who says you're the leader. We spoke about different types, different sources of power, or different forms of power as we see them. We spoke about Maxwell's levels of development as a leader. And we started talking about leadership skills. One of the things which I mentioned, which I think is very important, and I want to go over it again, is that there are certain skills which are critical. And if you want to be a good leader, or even a good follower, but like if you want to be a good leader, you've got to learn these skills. There's 3 of them. One of them is accepting feedback. You have to learn as a leader how to accept feedback from your followers, people who you would not necessarily want to be getting feedback from, people who you expect to just be good followers, like your kids, right? You don't want to hear them complaining. You don't want to hear how they have an issue with some idea that you put forth. You don't want to hear how they don't want to eat what you made for dinner, or what you want to make for dinner, but as a skill, the ability to sit there and go, wait a second, I need to listen to this, I need to engage with it, and really try and understand it is really, really important. And it's super important the higher up you go, because people are more and more afraid of giving feedback the higher up in the hierarchy you go. The CEO, people don't want to give, if you're low down on the totem pole, you do not want to be giving the CEO feedback. And if the CEO is known as somebody who's capable of accepting feedback from anybody and hearing what they have to say, that goes a long way to getting people on board. Because I heard you, I see you, I understand what you're saying, and now let's try and figure out how to meld your idea with my idea, or let me tell you why I'm rejecting your idea. Remember, there's all different kinds of things you can do with an idea, but if you didn't even get the idea, it never even, wasn't even brought to your attention that there's a problem, that there's an issue, that there's something positive, right? So that's number one. Number two is active listening. Active listening is probably one of the hardest skills you will ever have to work on. It's the ability to stay engaged in a conversation when your brain is already jumping forward to what you're going to respond to, or thinking about something else because your brain just jumped to another topic and you aren't actively participating in the conversation. You're not there. And it is something which takes a great deal of self-discipline. Active listening, that process of not just being able to give. One of my students in the other course, he said, I called him out for something, and he said, I can give you back the last 3 sentences you said. I said, I don't care if you can give me back the last 3 sentences. That doesn't mean you are actively listening to me. It means that you're capable of remembering what I said. Active listening means you're engaging so that you can then respond to what I'm actually saying, not what you think I'm going to say, not what you think I want. So that's number two. And number three is inquisitiveness, asking questions. Leaders that don't ask questions and think they know everything are very dangerous. They're very dangerous because it means that they are not willing to question their own assumptions. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Assumptions, assume, the way it's spelled is it's spelled the way it is for a reason. It's spelled ASSUME. You make an ass of you and me when you assume. There's a reason why it's spelled that way, okay? It means something when you are not inquisitive. It means that you are going to make an ass of yourself. I would suggest that's not a good thing in a leader. So those are my 3 biggies. Everything else on this list is important. But if we had to prioritize where you have to focus to be able to, there we go. And then we spoke about leadership styles. And we spoke about all these different styles. And at the end of the day, we all agreed that there's no one right style. There's no one good style to use. There's no one, this is the way to do it. It depends on your followers, and it depends on what you have as your ability, what's within your capabilities. There are some people who cannot be paternalistic. They just don't have it in them to be, warm and fuzzy and rubbing the backy kind of person. They just don't have it. And there are some people who just, you ask them to be a servant leader, or they need to be presenting servant leadership, and they're like, I'm not willing to sacrifice of myself for this group. I'm just not. So you have to recognize that some leadership styles will come into play more or less. There are, however, 2 styles which are very relevant, and we see them often. One is the transactional style, and the other is the transformational style. Transformational leadership, which is, I think, more than a style, I would actually say it's an underlying principle that the other styles can sort of rest on, is super important. I think, personally, that if you want to look at really great leaders, even the ones who were harsh and demanding and super authoritative or even authoritarian in their style, they still very often were trying to do it in order to take the followers and build them up to create something new. And that something new meant that these followers had to grow and develop and transform. And I think if we look at the military, right, basic training in the military is, in some ways, a very transformational experience. You take these people who are coming from all different walks of life. They have never had this experience before. And now you're going to put them through basic training where part of what they are going to do is change as individuals. They are going to grow as individuals. They might even become a team if it's that kind of basic training where they are supposed to become brothers in arms. And that transformation takes place. I'm not saying that the drill sergeant, or the officers who are in charge of the training aren't going to also use transactional leadership as part of that, where there's going to be, punishment if you do something wrong, and there are rules, and it's set system, whatever. But the transformational leadership can take place as part of that process. And it sounds kind of interesting because on the one hand, you think the Army, you got one leader. In the Army, it's not about innovation and new ideas, and it's not that the group interests are prioritized over the individual. But in fact, they are, if you think about it. It's not that they're innovating in terms of creating some new app. They're creating a whole new group of people that are supposed to work together. That kind of innovation is taking place. It's human innovation. It's different. So we spoke about this, and we spoke about the leaderships by Goleman and some other leadership styles and which one's the best. We spoke about path goal theory and how path goal theory basically says to us, hey, leaders sometimes need to jump into the fray and eliminate an obstacle so that the followers can continue on the path that they're coming in. Sometimes the leader's got to call in aerial support and go, hey, we've got a really big tank in our way. Please bomb it. Okay, we can move forward. Go through the hole, right? And that idea isn't just military. I mean, sometimes the leader, who may not be a great programmer or a great, chef or whatever, still needs to step in and go, okay, where's the roadblock? What's causing us the problem? And how can I either eliminate it myself, or who do I need to bring in to help me eliminate it? Okay? Which leads to the idea of situational leadership and needing to understand the developmental levels of your followers. So you've got here what's called the developmental levels. You've got low competence, but highly motivated. You've got middling competence, motivated. You've got someone who's, competent, pretty competent, and their motivations. And then you've got people who are highly competent, highly motivated. When you can look at the people who you're working with and say to them, or say to yourself, I know where this person is, it will help to address what type of interaction, what type of relationship your leadership needs to look like in the short-term process. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. If we're talking about leadership as process, does that mean it's only the long-term process, or are there also shorter-term processes that take place? Jaegers, what do you think?
Well, quite naturally, there are both long-term processes, but also short-term processes, because, well, a team in general needs to resolve not only long-term tasks, but also short-term tasks, and therefore you will, a leader will need to engage into leadership as a short-term process.
Right. So it's very interesting, because what we have here is, instead of just doing leadership as, well, I want vision, it may be that leadership is actually vision, but in order to get to vision, here's process number 1 to develop this person so that they're no longer needing direction. Here's process number 2 to get them through coaching. Here's process number 3 to get through the point where I need to just give them support. And now I can leave this person to do this part of this task on my own, and now we're moving even more efficiently towards vision, right? And that is a very interesting way of thinking about leadership. Not just this long-term, I want to get there, but rather I want to grow these people so that they can help me get there efficiently and effectively. And one of the most important things that a leader can do is try and develop these people so that he can also engage or gauge how well are they able to get into a state of flow, a state of that ability to just get things done easily and maneuver through life, maneuver through the tasks at hand without a lot of friction. Almost feeling like time has stood still, but you wake up 5 hours later and go, wait, I've been sitting doing this job for 5 hours, and oh my God, where did the time go? This was so nice. It was awesome. It was great. Video games are really great at getting people into the flow. Once kids learn a skill set in a video game and they really get pretty good at it, but it's still challenging, right? Or they started at an easy level and they learned the skills, and then they went to medium level, and then they went to oh my God, survive this level of video game. Essentially is taking these people, these students, these kids through these levels of development into a state where they can feel flow. Because then you've got them online longer, you've got them engaged longer, you've got them, and kids have reported multiple times, kids report how they lose a sense of time and space when they're playing video games. And it's not just because they're absorbed in the world as a world, but because they are also absorbed in the challenge that the world presents. And that challenge is very fun for them. It feels good. And I mentioned, I think, that there is something missing here, which is your comfort zone, right? That central area where you might sometimes feel a little bit worried, but more or less feel in control. And sometimes you might feel that sense of arousal of like, oh, this is interesting. And sometimes you're going to be a little bit bored. But more or less, you're in your comfort zone. You know what happens to most of us most of the time? That's where we live. Now, your comfort zone is a wonderful place to live. I have a friend who has a mug. You know what's written on the mug? Your comfort zone will kill you. Because if you always live in your comfort zone, are you growing? Are you developing? Are you challenging yourself? Are you seeking to improve as an individual? Or are you continually living in that, I'm feeling comfortable here, so I don't need to do something different. I don't need to change anything. It doesn't mean you always have to go out of your comfort zone. I'm not saying like every single day, go jump off cliffs. But your comfort zone can kill you because you get so used to it that norm doesn't let you develop and grow and see challenges as what they are, opportunities, even if there's a little bit of risk involved. Because very often when we live in that comfort zone, what happens is while we're in the comfort zone, we sort of live like here in the comfort zone very often, not really in the middle, right? Where there's a little bit of boredom, a little bit of worry, maybe some anxiety, and a little bit of apathy. And that tends to be like, at some point you start feeling this as a sense of the norm. Like you go, oh, life is boring. Life is boring. It's tedious. It's every day. It's gotta go to work again. Gotta do this again. Gotta make dinner again. Making dinner sucks, but it's wonderful all at the same time if you challenge yourself every once in a while, right? But if it's the same thing over and 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 over again, it's tedious. It's boring. Okay? So I want you to think about this for yourselves, but I also want you to think about this in terms of how does this impact the ability of a government, for instance, to get something done. They have workers who come in and live in their comfort zone all day long. That's all they do. They come in, they do their work, which is the same work they did yesterday, which is the same work they did the day before, which is the same work they did the day before, it's the same work they did the day before. There's no challenge. There's no innovation. There's nothing new. There's just bureaucracy. Think about that for a minute. How does that impact the government's ability to function? It's a hard question. I'm not asking an easy question, but I want you to think about it.
Like my mind went blank now, but
I didn't understand the question. How does the boredom of life?
Not how does the boredom of life, how does living in a comfort zone, right? What I'm suggesting is that within this, there's a place called the comfort zone. We're going to call it like right there. It's right in the middle, okay? How does that comfort zone, does the fact that many of the people who are working in government live within that comfort zone? They do, right? They're not, if you're in the military, it might be a little bit different. You're going to see people who are maybe much more into that arousal, flow, control sort of sense if they are shooters and out there doing stuff, right?
actually I think the opposite happens.
Okay, hold on. I wanted to, okay. My question though is, I just want to clarify the question. My question is if most of government work, or most work, if you think about it, a lot of work, generally it lives in a comfort zone. You might sometimes hit flow for a little bit, but then come out of it. But like more or less, you're in this middle area here somewhere. You're not into an extreme version of any of these. How does that impact government or business or?
As I said, I think it's the opposite, because sometimes the new government want to change everything, even the thing that was working before. Mm-hmm. So when they I want to go out of my comfort zone, they are changing a policy that it was working before. So I think every government in the world, for example, if a right-wing government was the previous one and now it's a left-wing, they want to change everything, even the thing that was working. So
okay.
That's my opinion. I think sometimes it's bad. If not like.
Wait, hold on. You took the exact opposite. You said what you just said, and I want to make it really clear. I'm talking about the worker bees. You're talking about leadership. You're saying new leadership comes in and says, I want to challenge you to come out of your comfort zone. That's what you're saying. And what happens? What generally happens in the government? Do the people who are working there want to be challenged out of their, do they like being challenged out of their comfort zone?
Oh no, but it also happens in my experience, not only in the government, but in private companies as well.
100%.
I've observed that very often, ordinary workers spend their time, instead of doing something productive and innovative, just browsing Facebook for instance,
So-
during their work hours.
So that I think is different. I think that it's different when, okay, so let's clarify for a minute, because I think that that's an important point. I'm not talking about people who don't have what to do and therefore are just sitting at work twiddling their thumbs and their level of apathy is simply above and beyond and they literally are on Facebook or doing whatever, but they're not actually engaged in work. I'm talking about within the realm of actual work, the work that they have to be doing. There's no challenge. They get it done, they're done for the day, they go home. They do it again. They do it again. They do it again. They do it again. One of the reasons why there's a lot of turnover, right, in business, for instance, is that people want a challenge. I mean, yes, there are other reasons. There are cultural reasons. The people are looking for a place where they feel comfortable, which has their value system, things like that, 100%. But people also want to be challenged. If they're doing the same thing over and over again, at some point it gets tedious and boring and they want to quit. They just go, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Right? It's not challenging. It doesn't put me into a state of arousal. It doesn't put me into a state of like, ooh, this is going to be good. Yeah.
In terms of government, by the way, again, I mean, I have never worked for the government myself. I don't know, maybe it's different in Israel. But in quite a few government civil servants, if they choose that place, you can usually obtain a transfer to a different department. You can try something new.
Right. So very often, someone who is in civil service, they may change, which is the same thing of what we're talking about in business, where people are quitting a job and finding a new job or anything like that. The fact is, though, that this is very important to us because if we recognize as a leader that we aren't challenging our people, we aren't giving them a sense of I know how good you are at this, let's see how well you do that, right? Which is what this is. To get someone into a state of flow, right, you want to say, I know what your skill level is. I'm going to challenge you with something that's going to reach that skill level, take that skill level and push it, not to the extreme, but pretty far, right? Into this area where I know you can control the situation. Where, you know what, your skills might not quite be high enough to do this, but I trust that you'll be able to do it. Right? And show me what you can do. And here's the thing, we talk about flow, or I've been talking about flow as like this escape from time and space. But flow can simply be that space where you go, wow, this was really challenging, but really good. Like, it felt like a good challenge. It doesn't have to be complete loss of time and space. That's like ultimate flow, you know, like that's like flow at the top right corner, right? But flow in the comfort zone even, right? Where you're within that comfort zone, but somewhere here where like you feel it and you go, wait a second, in that area right there where I'm feeling the, you know, in that area, somewhere like from here down, let's say, right? Or even from here down, right? You go, wait a second, that flow is so good. It feels so good to be there because I'm demonstrating my skills and I'm showing you what I can do. And the leaders recognize the worth of having the people working at that level. Now, there's a fatal flaw with this also, which is, what happens if you have people working at this level all the time?
You might get a burnout.
You get burnout, right? Burnout is very, very dangerous. Now, burnout is not just about, you know, business. Athletes get burnout. If they work their bodies too much over time and they don't give time to rest and they don't, like, so there's also a biological function of burnout. Burnout isn't just social burnout. Like, it isn't just socioeconomic burnout. It can also be physical burnout where the body just goes, I'm done. I need a rest. And people who try and get into this flow state, and runners, very long-distance runners, get into flow states. But it can be very dangerous for them, because if they do it and they seek that feeling again and again and again and again and again, and they don't do it in a methodical manner, which includes rest periods, and includes recuperation, and it includes stretches and everything else that goes along with it, the boring stuff, then, and it's the boring stuff. It's the things where you go, nah, I don't want to be doing that.
I know that what you're currently describing is a very big concern, and a lot of resources are devoted to that in big tech companies like Google, Facebook, Intel, that sort of thing.
Correct. A lot of companies will try and mitigate that sense of, hey, you've been doing this for so long and you're worrying yourself, the leader, the manager will come in and go home, right? And there are mechanisms in place to try and take care of it. And sometimes it's just, hey, we're taking a day. Everybody's taking a day today. Beat it. But one of the major requirements of good leadership is being able to read your followers. Where are they in this? How often are they in this, where they are in that state of flow and are consistently pushing themselves, and can they continue to do that over time? And part of that is about their environmental factors, right? It's about what are the things outside of leadership, outside of the thing that the leader actually sees, that are maybe impacting their ability to get into flow. Or maybe they're using flow, the flow state, as a way to avoid other environmental factors. Right? There are people who go to work because they want to avoid stuff that's going on at home. What's going on at home is too hard for me to deal with. I want to be at work. And sometimes that juxtaposition, that conflict between those environmental factors, external environmental factors and internal environmental factors, can have a very detrimental effect because the person is so pushed to challenge themselves and keep working and keep working and keep working because they don't want to deal with whatever's going on, or they don't have the ability to deal with what's going on. And they may not have the ability to deal with what's going on, that they need to be pushed out and go, wait a second, time out. Now, environment internally, inside of an organization, the military, the government, business, I don't care, families, right? Doesn't matter. The question that arises is, well, first of all, how does the environment impact leadership? This isn't about strategy or goals, and it's not necessarily about politics, but it is. And it's definitely not necessarily about power. What it's about is whether or not the environment itself is leadership friendly. Do managers who are upper managers support the leaders? Do they listen? Is that feedback loop effective? Right? So a team leader who needs support, is he getting the support that he needs? Does he know who he can call? Is everything in silos where this is us, this is you, this is us, this is you. No, you can't cross to that silo to ask for help. What are you talking about? Right? It's like the Marines and the Air Force and the Navy and the infantry, and they go, well, we're infantry and we're Marines, we're this and we're that. And you go, joint first work, right? Joint force operations. Hello? That creates a more open environment for leaders to be more effective. Because they can, if path goal leadership comes into play, one of the Marines teams is on the ground and they're working, and they've got something, they can call on the Air Force. They can call on the Navy, if there's a big Navy ship that's got airplanes on it, or a big Navy ship that's got rockets on it, and go, hey, help!
This is, I don't want to talk about this all the time, but it kind of, it's almost natural.
You want to talk about the Ukraine?
Yeah,
of course.
Their command and control structures are extremely centralized, and their local commanders are unable to do what you have just told. They cannot, for example, request an auxiliary support, or they cannot, for example, I've been reading a lot, apparently they have those new unmanned aircraft, but if you are a field commander, you can request for reconnaissance using that thing. Some general in the
right, and because of that centralized management, right, not leadership, management, and that silo effect of you have to go this way to go that way, they're essentially creating a situation where the environment is not leadership friendly, where a leader on the ground, a guy who's got his guys behind him and is not just managing, but is actually leading, and we're going through that, we're going through it, we're going to do it together, goes, I need air support, and he's not getting it, and the guys go, I'm not going through that without air support. I'm not doing that.
In particular, in Russian military, not only Russian military, in Russian generally speaking, government, it's very leadership unfriendly because the higher-ups are afraid that you will unseat them.
Right. There's this fear that goes into it of well, if he proves to be really good, how's that going to impact us, right? If he's really good, how's that going to impact us? But there's another part to it. What you're saying is it's not just that it's about a leadership-friendly environment. It's a question of balancing between a leadership-friendly environment and a followership-friendly environment, right? Where the leaders, those higher-up leaders and higher-up managers are able to, or officers are able to say, wait a second, my job is to create an environment where this guy who's one of my followers feels like the environment is good for him, where he can open his mouth and say something. An officer who's not willing to open his mouth to a higher-ranking officer and make requests for something that he needs or comment on why he thinks this might not be a wise plan because the officer is going to not accept the feedback. We spoke about that a minute ago in terms of skill sets, right? Not willing to accept the feedback. What happens? Follower-friendly environment? It is not. Well, then what do you expect? Leadership's going to fail. And it's going to fail not because it wasn't a leadership-friendly environment, but because it wasn't a followership-friendly environment. So there's this fine balance that has to take place between making it really good for the leaders, so the leaders feel like they can accomplish stuff and succeed, and make it really good for the followers, so that the followers feel like they can succeed and accomplish stuff and progress towards vision. Okay? And we start thinking about this, we go, well, wait a second, there's a whole bunch of environmental factors that go on beyond work. And this is true for the military just as much as it is true for government, as much as it is true for business, as much as it is true for your family. Just to be really clear, you can apply these same environmental factors and you go, wait a second, what do you mean? Well, a family has its core unit family, right? But then you've got your extended family and obligations there. For instance, honor your mother and father. There are a lot of ways you can honor your mother and father. But if you have your core family that you're dealing with and your parents are aging and they suddenly need help going to this doctor and to that doctor and they need help with this thing and they need help cleaning for Passover and they need help, I don't know what, putting stuff away and picking stuff up and hey, can you go shopping for me? And wait a second. So all of a sudden this environment, think about how those external environmental factors outside of the core family unit, still family, are pulling on the ability of people to get things done. Whether they're leaders or they're followers, whether they're parents or children, whether they are generals or they are privates. These apply to them on some level. Now, in certain militaries, they make an effort to eliminate this as much as humanly possible. The American military does a pretty good job of eliminating some of this. Not all of it, but some of it. The Russian military does a very good job of eliminating quite a lot of this. The North Korean military eliminates this entirely. Okay? Each government, each country will have a different balance that they sort of play with how much of this environmental beyond work, beyond being in the army, beyond being in whatever, is going to impact the ability of people to get things done. Military people, military officers and military fighters and shooters in the United States, when they are deployed, yes, they have the ability to call their family once in a while and things like that, but they are focused on being present on the field where they are right now. And that means taking their kids and family and whatever's going on there and going, wait, back burner. I can't deal with that. I can't let it be an environmental factor external to what I'm doing right now. I can't let it pull on me too much. Why? My head needs to be in the game. On the same level, you might see this in business, where there's a huge deadline coming up, and all of a sudden you see the business saying, the leadership in business saying, hey guys, I know everyone's got this, that, and the other thing going on in their lives right now. And, specific leaders will pull someone aside and go, listen, I know that you were supposed to go watch your kid's baseball game today. This is that important. I don't do this very often. This one, I need to call it. I need to tell you that the environmental factor cannot play a role in how we accomplish this or not. External environmental factor. And that's a hard thing to go up and say to someone. I know you were planning on doing something with your family, and I generally don't do this, but today. Now, there are some people who it's very easy for them. I know managers who, when people come in and go, I'd like to take a day off, they go, no. How do you feel when that person does that? I want to rip your head off. Right? But the ability to recognize when that is an essential thing to do, and that's the fine line again. That fine line. A leadership-friendly environment versus a followership-friendly environment. If he continually says no, you can't take time off, no, you can't take time off. And obviously timing is important. Let's say someone hasn't taken time off for 9 months, hasn't requested a day, but then says, listen, I need to take time off. But he's doing it 3 days before the big thing is due, and there's a lot of work to be done. As a leader, I have to say no. But as someone who cares about my followers and wants to make sure that I have a followership-friendly environment, I want to say yes. But it's my obligation to make sure that this is done. And if you say no, you're a jerk. And if you say yes, you might fail. Now what? That is the crux of leadership. That is that hard point of leadership where you have to try and play that balance. It's hard. Because you want to make sure you're on have good relations with your followers. Because your followers matter a lot in leadership. They matter a lot. Because as we talk about followers, and there are different ways to look at followers and followership, they have the ability to change how they respond to you. They can change how they respond to you. They can make it so that I'm just going to sit here until you tell me what to do. Tell me okay, I'll do that. I'm done. Okay, you won't, okay, I'm done. Okay, it happens in the military. There are guys, when I was on a team, there were guys who, unless you told them what to do, they would sit there and wait for orders. And then there were the guys who would be like, this is what has to happen next, and then we got to do this, and we got to do this. All right, let's go. But they weren't being leaders. They were simply being exemplary followers. They were actively thinking about what else needs to get done and taking a role. But they were doing it out of choice. Out of choice. Not because somebody forced them to do it. Followership is a choice. What type of follower we have is just as much a choice as the leadership style we use. Which means that when we want to look at leadership, we have to engage with a question of, well, what type of followers are we looking at? Now, there's different ways we can look at it. I personally think that there's a mix between the two different forms that I'm going to show you right now. One is Kelly. Kelly gives us the 5 different types of followership, and he gives us 2 different axes to work with, 2 different variables. One variable is the level of participation, right? And the other one is how much independent thinking are we talking about? Super independent thinking, not so much independent thinking, right? But if we look at Kellerman's version of it, right? Kellerman says, wait, it's one-dimensional, level of engagement. Wait a second, level of engagement? Well, isn't that? What do you think? What do you think? Is level of engagement, could you suggest that someone who has levels of engagement, could we take this, turn it on its side, right? Where you get isolates way over there on this picture, and then you get bystanders, participants, activists, and diehards. Could we sort of cut this up like that in some way, shape, or form? I'm curious. What do you think? Okay, hold on.
I'm not following the question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I don't understand the question.
All right, I'll explain it again. There are 2 different theories out there right now, or there's a lot more, but there's 2 that we're going to talk about, that explain followership, to tell us what level or what kind of followers we have on a team, or in a business, or take a pick, group. Kelly comes and says there's 2 variables that we need to look at. One is the level of participation, right? And the other one is the level of independent thinking. Okay? Level of participation, level of independent thinking. And he goes, okay, based on that, you have 4 major quadrants. 4 major ones, and then you get this middle quadrant, right? 4 major quadrants. If the person has a low level of participation and is not really deep on independent thinking, you got to tell them what to do, and they're going to be passive. They're going to be the twiddler of the thumbs until you tell them exactly what they have to do, and then you got to tell them what to do, and they'll do it. They may cheerlead on the side, maybe, right? But more or less, they're going to be a bystander unless they get called in to take action, right? Then you're going to have people who more participatory, right? They're more likely to participate, but it depends. Sometimes they will participate a lot, and sometimes they will participate less, and sometimes they will only start to participate when the group starts to see success. Like, I'm part of this group, but until I see you guys starting to... Can I give you an example? NATO and the Ukraine right now. Okay? NATO and the Ukraine right now is playing the conformist follower system. Until the Ukraine starts showing success, we're not so sure we want to get involved. But now that the Ukraine is showing success, pile on! Let's be part of that team. Do you see it? Okay. So this happens a lot, right? This kind of follower is very common. So is that one. So this one. The alienated follower, lots of independent thinking, but they are not really participatory. They have their own idea about how things should get done, about the right way to get something done, about the path that we should be taking. They don't like the strategy. Generally, they don't like the strategy or the tactics that are being involved, depending on what level you're talking about. I think our strategy is flawed, or I think the tactics that we're engaged in are wrong. They don't necessarily deal on the operative level. They do sometimes, but like more or less. Right? They're going to go, I don't like vision, and I don't like the process that you want us to go through to get to vision. Or I accept vision, but I think that what you want to do, the goals that you've set to get us to vision, not quite right. Okay, so they go, I'm going to do it my way, or I think we should do it my way, and they're vocal about it. And it makes for a schism on the team. Because now you've got someone challenging for what? Leadership. You have somebody challenging for leadership. Right? And then you've got people who are highly participatory of their own free will and independent thinkers. They tend to be exemplary. These are the people he's a full-on team member. You feel it. You feel like the person is part of the team. You feel like the country is part of the alliance. Actively participating is not just there for the sake of saying, I voted in terms of actively participating on the alliance. Right? My question is, okay, the second theory by Kellerman says we don't need two variables, just one variable. Level of engagement. How engaged are the followers? Isolates, not engaged. They may be actively pursuing something, but they're not engaged with the team in pursuit of that thing. Listen to what I just said. They may be actively engaged, but they're not engaged with the team to do that thing. Snipers sometimes act as isolates. They are part of a greater process, but they will work independent of a team towards that same process's ultimate vision. Right? Then you've got bystanders. These are bystanders. These are people who are engaged. They've got the card that says they're card-carrying members of the team, right? I'm part of it. Yeah, I'm part of it. I'm going to cheer on the side. Go! Right? But you're not on the field. Or you might be on the field, but you only step on the field sometimes, rarely, if you need to. Participants, people who are far more active. These people are actively participating, but they still need a lot of guidance. They still need a lot of help. They still need a lot of, let's go this way, let's go that way. Come on, come get involved. Activists, come follow me, let's go do this thing, it's going to be fun. You all know someone like this who has something that they want you to do, and they're like, come follow me, it's going to be great, we're going to do it together, let's go. Activists. And they're out there giving out flyers, or they're out there, getting you to sign on the petition, or they're out there, working to get the thing done. And then you've got your diehards. Gung-ho, end of this, and nothing's going to stop them. they are going to, they are literally, if you're talking about certain kinds of groups, they are literally willing to die for the cause.
Like this is the type of person who jumps on the grenade.
So yes and no. I think that, okay, so let's take a moment to talk about this concept because I think it's an important one. The idea of jumping on the grenade doesn't necessarily dictate the type of follower that the person was.
No, I'm not saying that, but the diehard probably would.
Yes, a diehard would probably do that, but it is not a necessity. Yes, someone who actively presents as a diehard will probably be more willing to jump on the grenade as someone else. Have you guys seen the movie Captain America? The first one. Okay, so he was determined to become part of the military. He would lie and write different names and write he was from somewhere else, and every time he'd get rejected until the doctor comes along and goes, I'm going to make you into a superhero. Approved. And then there's this test that they do at some point where they're all running through basic training and running through this, and they've got it's the colonel in charge. He's got all the different soldiers lined up, and he's talking to the lady, whose name I can't remember, which is Agent Carter. He's talking to Agent Carter, and he goes, "Really? You still like that little one? That's the one you like? Huh, he's no soldier." And he takes a grenade, dummy grenade, and he chucks it at the soldiers who are all being tested. And they all scatter and run for cover, except for him. And he jumps on the grenade. And that is the example of the diehard jumping on the grenade. But it's not a necessity.
No, I understand. It's an if relationship, but not if and only if.
Right, exactly. It's not an if and only if. It's a, if this happens, then that's a likely result. But you will find other people. You could find someone who's way down here who will still jump on the grenade. It's possible, depending on who's involved, depending on what the nature of the circumstances are. Okay? My question is, and I think it's important because when we talk about theories, right, I think if you look at all the theories I've presented to you over the year so far, and we're getting close to the end of the year, so there's been a lot of theories, right? A lot of them really sort of seem to meld together and can sort of be overlapped, or not necessarily overlapped, but they either work actively together, like Pascal theory and I just said it. I just had it. What's it called? Not that one. That one. No. That one. Situational leadership, right? Pascal theory and situational leadership, they work really well together. Why? Because the whole purpose of Pascal theory is to see where your development level of your followers and then help them eliminate things that are beyond their ability, beyond their level of development. Are you okay?
Yeah, no, it's just.
Okay. So my question is, and I'm going to ask you again now that I've explained, do you think, I think you can, do you think that this can meld with that?
It can be mapped. But
I think it's already there.
How?
I mean, engagement and participation have a...
You're saying that this and that are almost the same thing?
They're not the same thing,
Okay.
but they're definitely pretty similar.
Yes, okay.
In terms engagement means the level of participation, while participation means more of the way you participate. But in some level,
Okay.
the way you participate reflects how much you participate. So the passive obviously does not participate much. So it would apply to the other graph as the
Lower level.
lowers, yeah, exactly. And so on and so on. Come from as being,
Okay, so here's my question. How would you lay it, what I asked before was, would it be like left to right? You just take you take this one, right? We take this one, and then we just flip it on its side and go, okay, hold on. Isolate, diehards. Would it be like that?
What do you mean diehards?
Diehards would be over here. Would you put diehards over here and isolates over here?
An exemplary diehards, yeah.
Okay, only up here?
Maybe.
Can you get a conformist diehard? Can you get a conformist diehard?
You know what? Yes.
How? Talk to me why.
I don't know. I think it's You can even get a passive diehard without even realizing.
I think a follower in a cult would be a compliance
Exactly.
diehard.
Okay.
A sheep, because it's rooted in there.
Okay. Right? So you're saying, wait, you're putting, you say you could even get one over here?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay, so then here's the question. Can you take each of these and divide them up into 5 groups, into the different levels, where you're going to get an isolate, then you're going to get a bystander, and then you're going to get maybe a more active passive participant, right? Someone who is more of a cheerleader, for instance, but only when they get called on to cheerlead, right? And then you've got somebody who's, oh, I'm an active cheerleader. I'm going to stand here and cheer on the side, but don't expect me to step on the field, right? And then you get your diehard passive, your diehard bystander cheerleader, your diehard sheep, where they very much are like, they've got the colors and they're into the sports and they, but somebody has to drag me along if we're going to a game. Oh, I don't want to go to a game unless someone drags me along. I'm not even going to watch the games, like, but I'm a diehard. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who, like, for instance, in their family, for a soccer team or a football team or American football team or baseball team, it doesn't matter. Their family grew up diehard fans of that team, and that person grew up believing in that team, but they never watch a game. They don't know who's on the team anymore. They don't have a clue how well the team is doing. But if you ask them what team they root for, they'll tell you a team. And they will live and die by that team. You will not change their mind about that team. They will, like, die on the altar of that team. Have you ever met someone like that? Have you?
That was me last year.
What?
It was me last year.
It was you last year. What does that mean? No one want to hear this. Explain. What do you mean?
Last year, I think I was like very, I don't know, occupied with my things from university. I didn't follow my team in Brazil for soccer, for example, but I had a team. I didn't know like the name of the coach of the striker or whatever. And but now, like, I'm following, like, watching the match.
So you've moved. You've moved on your level of participation, right, from here maybe to somewhere over here. Now, the question is, did you move that way or did you move this way? Do you like the new coach? Do you think they're doing well? Or are you like, oh! What?
I don't think I'm doing well.
Oh, so are you more up here?
Yeah.
Oh, do you see it? You could move. You could be here, but then you can become like, wait, I'm a diehard. No matter what, I'm a diehard. But how much of a diehard? Well, if I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to be a diehard, alienated follower, and I'm going to hate you. And I'm going to say to you I hate you. And I'm going to put it on Facebook that I hate you, and I'll let you all know how much I hate you, right? But you're an alienated follower because you don't like what's going on. You think there's a better way. But you're a diehard follower. Wow, wait a second. So it's not all the way across. It almost looks like you could overlap it sort of in each quadrant here. You're going to find a little bit of each. How likely are you going to find a diehard passive follower? It's less likely than you will find, for instance, an exemplary diehard follower. That make sense? Because you would think that a diehard follower will also be exemplary in terms of their independent thinking and in terms of their participation. But there are diehard followers who can't think independently, but they're diehard followers. They will literally die on the altar of the values or the idea that you're giving them, but you have to explain it to them and show them and take them and yes, 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 yes. And they're yes people. Do you see it? Isn't it interesting? The ideas, the theories, the main concept I want you to see here is that these work together. Different ideas that I've been presenting to you over time all work together towards one general overall concept, which is that leaders and followers to work together need to be able to understand each other well. They have to be able to judge what kind of leader am I dealing with, what kind of follower am I dealing with, what style of leadership do I need to use, what style of followership do I need to use, would be appropriate for this situation. There are situations where it's appropriate to be a conformist. There are situations where it's appropriate to be alienated. Where you go, I fundamentally disagree with what's going on here. I understand the need to reach that vision, but I don't think this is the right way to do it. I don't like how we're doing this. What? I think a lot of us have been in that situation. Sometimes that situation is the scariest situation to be in. Because what are you essentially doing? You are alienating yourself from the group and from leadership. You're singling yourself. You're not being singled out. You're actively putting yourself in a situation where you're challenging yourself and going, okay, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone here, and I'm gonna call it. I'm going to say this is bad. I don't like it. It's wrong. Not the right way to do this. Got to talk about it. Let's go. Do you see it? Do you see how these all work together? Do you see how these work with path goal leadership? How path goal leadership would have to look at this and go, wait a second, I've got someone who has been here and is suddenly here. What's going on? Activist, someone who's an activist, exemplary leader, like always there, always doing, and suddenly they're more conformist. You go, well, what happened? You have to, right? You have to choose. You have to figure. Well, you also have to figure out whether it's worthwhile for you as a leader to do that. But the first question you ask is, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Is everything okay at home? Is everything okay at work? What is it? Is it that the environment is causing? Is it something outside of our little environment? Is it something outside? Is it something about the challenge? Has it gotten boring? Have your skills developed? Have I misunderstood your level of development? It's possible, right? So looking at how these things work together is a huge part of leadership and followership. It's a huge part of strategy and strategic effect. Remember, strategic effect, when you talk about strategic effect, you're talking about the tactics. You're not talking about what happens up here. You're talking about how all these little things put together make that happen, right? And the process that you go through in order to do that. Well, that has command and control as part of it, right? Mission control versus command and control. How much command and control do I need to have as the leader versus how much mission control? Sometimes the follower simply needs you to go, you know what? You do it. Your developmental level is high enough, you do it. I believe you can live here. I'm just not letting you. Go for it. Parents sometimes do this to their kids and stunt them a little bit. I know I've done it, right? Where your kid is egging to get up to here because they think that they're really capable of doing something and you are not prepared for them to do it. And you want them to just be conformist. You want them to just continue being what you want them to be, and they are ready to jump up a level and start actively participating on doing something on their own. They have their own idea about how to get something done. And you go, oh, I'm not prepared for you to do that. Okay? So I want you to see how these, and this is so true for strategy, because these two concepts, the followership and leadership aspects that we're talking about now, of environment and path goal leadership and situational development and situational leadership and how they all work together is what will effectively impact or negatively impact strategic effect for the group. So see how these all work together, right? We need XYZ resources. We can't have XYZ resources. Well, then I'm going to move over to there. We want to change the value system by which we do things. We think that this is really important. Exxon just said that they will not put any flags that are representative of groups, political grouping flags, on their building. Any of their buildings. The Exxon group. No LGBTQ flags, no pride flags, no Black Lives Matter flags. You may not put them on the building. And a whole bunch of people went from here to here. And a whole bunch of people went from here to here. And there were a whole bunch of people who went from these to there. One decision. A decision by leadership, not management. Leadership. Vision. This is who we are. This is what we want to represent. This is how we want the world to be. This is how we want to present ourselves to the world. Impacts their strategic capacity to get things done. Because now there's internal fighting. Now there's internal argument about what's right and what's good and how we should behave and how we should present ourselves as a company. Twitter just got bought out by Elon Musk, or is in the process of getting bought out by Mr. Elon Musk. Have you guys heard about what's going on there? What? Yeah, and what's going on? Have you heard what's going on? There's a lot of people who are freaking out about it. Oh, it's gonna negatively impact. Oh, it's gonna negatively impact. Oh, it's gonna negatively impact. Ah! I'm quitting Twitter. There was like a drop in Twitter usage. Hundreds of millions of people said no more Twitter. Why? Because these were people who, this is where they lived in Twitter, right? And they probably lived in the activist or at least participatory to activist zone of these. They weren't diehard. There's very few diehard Twitter fans. Like Twitter people, I mean, there are people who are like hardcore diehard Twitter people, and there's like that's how they communicate with their entire world.
Like the funny
126
thing
letters.
the argument of these people is like, he's a billionaire, but like the previous people that were running Twitter, it was a billionaire private company. So what's the difference?
Right, and I think it's more about his political perspective on the world. Like if you look at the ideas that he holds to be true and dear, they are not in line with many of the people who use Twitter and think of it as a great platform.
They're also not in line very crucially with the ideas that employees hold.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm not just talking about the people who use Twitter. All the people, the people. You're right. I didn't even mention it, but the employees who work at Twitter had a very specific perspective of what this meant, and all of a sudden he's coming in, and his ideas are different. And if it's a private company, you know who gets to decide what Twitter will or will not be? The person who owns it, not the employees. And so now there's a disconnect, or there appears to be some kind of disconnect between leadership and followership. And as a result, the process that we see happening is one of change in the levels of follower, both in terms of their level of engagement and also the level of participation and independent thinking that they are going to bring to the problems that they face, to the work that they have to do. And it's a political issue. This is politics. This is where politics comes into leadership writ large. My ideas versus your ideas about how the world should be. My ideas as a leader versus your ideas as an employee about how the world should be. Do you see it? Do you see it? Pretty cool, right? Can I give you an example from everyday family life? Can I use you as an example? Yeah? When you were a young lady in your house with your family, did you ever do something that you knew your parents didn't approve of? Of course, right? And when you did you know that there was going to be conflict as a result? Yeah. Okay. Was that politics? Why not? Was it politics? She has an idea about what something she wants to do, something she thinks is important and right and good. Whether it's good for her or not is not open for debate. I'm not debating whether or not what you want. Like you wanted to get a tattoo? I don't want to hear about it. But whatever it is you wanted to do, and your parents were like, that's not our way. Is that politics or not? In a business, would that be politics?
Yeah, probably.
In government, would that be politics? When you're talking about an alliance where there's one leader and there's other countries involved, and we want to go this way. Well, we think it's better to go that way. Is that not politics? Is that not, like, if we think about the nature of politics that we live, like what we live is politics, it goes far deeper, I think, than we think. And this is how it gets expressed. Governments do this. When you did have that moment of, I'm going to revolt against my parents, and think about the term we're using, revolution, revolt, right? You're going to revolt against your parents' authority. And did you do so willfully? Willingly? I wanted to do this? So what kind of follower were you?
I was very active.
Okay.
Die hard.
Okay, hold on. So you're going to this one. You're saying I was a diehard. If I was doing it, I was going whole hog into it. But my question is, were you an exemplary follower for your parents? A conformist to what your parents wanted? Passive, I'll do whatever they want, fine, I don't care. Alienated. You see it? You're alienated. Today, are you an alienated follower?
To my parents? No.
No. Where are you?
Sometimes,
Sometimes this, sometimes that, maybe even sometimes that, right? Do you see it? But isn't that politics? The decision which one you're going to be and how you're going to relate to the leader, to the ideas that the leader's representing, aren't those politics? Just as much as when one state and another state conflict with each other over ideas about what it means to be a state. The Ukraine is a great example, but here in Israel, Palestinians versus Israelis, Taiwan versus China. Like, aren't those conflicts sort of similar? We want you to see the world the way we see it. We want you to join us because this is what we want. And if you don't, then there's going to be punishment. I will go into the realm of manipulation and even into the realm of coercion instead of persuasion and even influence. Right? But that's politics. So through all of these different theories that I've sort of presented, runs this vein of the sphere of ideas clashing and relating to each other. Ideas relating to each other. We as representatives of those ideas, but government is a representative of that idea. Your parents as a core group represent an idea of what it means to be your family. And they expect you to live in the world of conformity for the most part, or exemplary follower, where when you walk out of the house, you will present the best face of our family outward. Did you ever hear that? Don't do that. You're embarrassing us. Yeah. Your parents ever said that to you? Your parents ever said that to you? Have your parents ever said to you, don't act like that. You're embarrassing us. When you were younger. Right? And then you grew up and you sort of like knew things that were like, you're like, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be an embarrassment to me and my family. I don't want people to, okay? We do this all the time. We live in this world of relationships. We live in this world of interaction, which is integral to the process of leadership. It is integral to the process of followership. It is integral to the world of politics. Not government. I mean, yes, government, but not government as politics. Politics. So one of the questions we ask is, do the individual traits that I bring to the table, or that a country brings to the table, or that a business brings to the table, plus skills and styles of how they interact with the world around them, with those people who they consider to be their followers, do those things equate to leadership? When Apple comes out with a new idea, and everyone knows Apple's about innovation, and they bring specific skills to the table, and they even use specific styles of leadership and how they relate to their followers, because they want their followers to be diehards. They love the diehard followers, right? Do these together equate to leadership, or is it more than that? Paolo, what do you think? Is it just traits plus skills plus style equals leadership, or is it more than those three put together?
I think really dependent on the vision and the goal.
Okay.
For some strategic pursuits, that's enough. But then leadership, I think, is highly situational in most cases.
Okay.
And also dependent on the nature of the followership.
Okay, so what you're saying is, we also have to look, maybe we need to individualize the follower and say, wait a second, it depends on the nature. If the followers are a group unto themselves, and it's a whole group, it's not individual followers, but it's a group of followers with leadership, then maybe that'll be enough. But if we have to individualize our for each follower, then that might not be enough. It might be more than that. Is that what you're saying? Okay. And I think you're right. I think that it depends often on the dyadic relationship that LMX theory talks about, where it says, LMX theory says all of leadership is really about me and you and me and you and me and you and me and you and me and you. And you're not a group because you're only a group because of me or because of the idea I represent. Right? So there's an issue that arises because of that, though. Because if what you said is true, then what happens when I really like boys and I like hanging out with the boys, but I don't want to hang out with you ladies so much. Ladies. In-groups and out-groups start to form. Right? And that can negatively impact leadership. It may positively impact strategy and negatively impact leadership all at the same time. The boys are really good at moving stuff. We're going to go move stuff. I don't care that you're upset about it. We're going to go move stuff. Right? And you go, well, that impacts our group negatively, but it positively impacts strategic capability. So we have to ask a question about what is the purpose of leadership? What's the purpose of leadership? Is the purpose of leadership what we've defined it as? Going all the way back to that grouping. Hold on, going back. Back. Is the purpose of leadership, come on, you can do this. There. Creating or guiding a process in which a unit influences other units to act in achieving and maximizing efforts towards a mutually shared vision, objective, or goal by applying adaptability, right? Or a process in which one unit adapts and influences other units. Is that, going back to here, hold on. Get there, hold on. Ha! Is that about strategy? Or is it about the team?
Well, that definition, in my opinion, is about both, because it mentions our objectives and our shared goals, but also about, growing.
So it has the duality to it. This is so important for you guys to see. It's so important. Team-making structure of a leadership, right? The ability, the idea of structural leadership, the ability to put a team together. The idea of leadership development, the idea of developing new leaders. I'm going to help people rise up in their leadership. Those are part of this strategic process for purpose. We have purpose. It's vision-oriented. It's vision-directed. It's not based on me because I'm charismatic and y'all love me, but it also requires that part of the relationship where we go, we have a good relationship and we can get along and we can get things done together. It needs both. So what happens when somebody fails to relate well? What happens? Can they still work together? Can two people still work together even though they don't get along?
Yes, but they have to enjoy it.
Okay. So if people can still work towards common goals even when they don't necessarily like each other. Like, for instance, do you guys know the Magic Act Penn and Teller? Have you guys ever heard of them? Okay, first of all, you should definitely watch some of their stuff. It's really cool. But Penn and Teller, they've been magicians as a team for a very long time. They are professional partners. They disagree about a lot of stuff when it comes to government and all kinds of other things. And they're not necessarily friends. Like, friends. But they're business partners and they work really well together. Okay? So their failure to relate on certain levels isn't negatively impacting their ability to relate on this specific thing. Now here's the second question that comes up. If leadership is a process by which one unit influences other units, towards vision, goal, using specific skills and blah, 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 and everything else I said, what happens when the relationship is not working so well? What happens to the process of leadership and followership? They might still be able to meet the goals, but could you say that can you still say leadership took place? Maybe, I'm not really sure. And I'm saying that honestly, I'm not really sure, because it's very situational. It depends on, well, what are we talking about? And what happens when there are us-them groups, cliques, in crowds and out crowds? They might still be successful as accomplishing vision. That strategic part might be great. But the process of one unit taking other units and getting them to work together towards a mutual goal may be faulty. Very often, we judge success in leadership by strategic success. The ability to get something done with the group. Because that's the ultimate purpose behind leadership, is to get the group to do something together with purpose. But what about all those people who are discontent with the process? They didn't like it. There's a movie, or there's a show, about Michael Jordan, which recently came out on Netflix. I've not seen it. My other class, all my students were like, you gotta watch it. Why were they so adamant that I should watch it? Because if you listen to the interviews that are done with almost all of Michael Jordan's teammates, they will tell you the process sucked. If you use LMX theory to analyze it, he had bad relations with most of them. He treated them badly. He was demanding of them. He was forceful. If you didn't do what he wanted, if you weren't a conformist and you weren't a diehard conformist to get things done, he would tear into you. And if you expressed, exemplary followership, you had independent thinking, he might still tear into you because he doesn't want you to be independent. He wanted everyone to be going his way. They won 5 titles. Process sucked. Outcome was phenomenal. Think about what that teaches us about leadership. Think about what that teaches us about leadership. Sometimes the process will suck. It will not be a good leadership process. Followership will be faulty. Things will be going wrong, but strategic outcome will still be achieved. And tactical maneuvers will still take place effectively. And it says something about how we can think about leadership. Not all leadership is going to be, oh, pretty, pretty flowers and everything's good. It's not. Sometimes it's harsh and rough and tough, and people hate it. Basic training. Not Israeli basic training. Israeli basic training is a whole different ballgame. American basic training, where we can go like, okay, these guys get torn apart, and they will probably hate their drill instructor throughout the process because he yells and screams at them and makes them do hard work, and they hate him. But when they get out on the battlefield and they're capable of fighting and doing what they need to do as a team, strategic success on his part. He was able to get them from there to there so they could do that. This is not an ideal type, but this is far more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not accurate, it's a far more realistic look at what leadership looks like. We've been talking ideal types this whole time. Theory is very nice, but reality is a much messier situation. And it's all about power. It's very much about power. Oh man, where did you go? It's very much about power. It's about how we express our power towards our followers and what that process, how a leader will help that process along, how the followers express their power, and what they do in order to move the process along. And whether that relationship is one of force or wealth or norms and rules, influence, persuasion, manipulation, coercion. All of those can come into play for leadership. All of them. All of them can lead to successful strategic outcomes. The process may suck. Outcome is still good. So when we look at leadership and we think about power, one of the things we want to ask ourselves is, well, what kind of leadership process would I like to be in? It's a choice you get to make. It's a choice you get to make as a parent. It's a choice you get to make as a friend. Think about it. When you are dealing with your friends and you want to get them on board for something, how do you do it? How manipulative are you? How much of a needling, like, oh, come on, you said you would, but you said you would, versus hey, I think this is a really good idea. Why don't you join me? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, that process has just as much the same impact on outcome as, you might still get the person to come with you. But what if they don't like you now? What if they don't want to come next time? And they might even say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. We did this thing great. I'm not doing it again. I'm done. The underlying current that I've been giving you has all been about politics. All of it. I don't know if you've seen it, but I want you to see it. I want you to see how strategy and leadership work together to engage in politics in our world. I want you to see how you can take any unit, any group, and look at their strategic process, look at their vision, look at their objectives, look at their goals, and how those goals and objectives conflict with other units. I want you to see how the opposite is true. Are there any questions up until now?